What's up everyone, I'm Tim and this is my channel 40 Times Around, where we talk about everything related to motorcycles, camping, traveling, and adventure. And today we're going to talk about how to find the best tent site for safety, comfort, and the best overall motorcycle camping experience. Stick around. Okay, so finding the perfect place to set up your tent is as much an art as it is a science. There are definitely some things to look out for, and today I'm going to tell you the 5 things I look at and consider before staking down my tent. You want to make sure that you're not putting yourself in unnecessary danger while you're asleep, and many hazards are easily avoidable if you just take the time to look around and assess the situation. Now, there are also some comfort issues to consider, and these are just as important in my opinion, because your quality of sleep is going to greatly affect your safety when riding a motorcycle the next day. Now, these tips are just what to look for when choosing where to put your tent once you've already found a campground or an area to camp in. It's not intended for finding the best campsite, which is something I'm planning to cover in a future video. So let's jump right into these 5 tips. And tip number 1 is to check out your neighbors. This tip has a few meanings depending on where you're camping. If you're in a designated campground with lots of other people, then you should be checking out the people around you. Look for signs that they might be partying or generally just being loud. A lot of people go to camp just to toss a few back and listen to loud music, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're hoping to get a good night's sleep, then it's probably best to just avoid that and distance yourself from it. Especially if you're on a long trip where a bad night of sleep can be difficult to catch up from. Also, you should keep in mind that it is better to have a nice long walk to the outhouse. When I was camping this past summer in Colorado, out in Black Canyon of the Gunnison National Park, there was only one tent site left, and it was about 50 feet from the outhouse. Now, the stench was thick, which was bad enough, but to make matters worse, the door had a heavy spring and would slam every time someone opened it to use the bathroom. It was loud and made for a real crappy night of sleep. It's better to avoid this if possible. Now, if you are wild camping, checking out your neighbors means something a little different. I actually prefer to wild camp. I like privacy and I like solitude when I camp. I like to be alone in nature and just relax and reflect on things. Now, you should make sure to give people their space if you are wild camping. I just think it's courteous to let people have their space if they got there first, and you just kind of move on to a new area and everybody has their own space. But checking out your neighbors in a wild camping situation means making sure there's no animal homes near you. I recently put out a video talking about camping tips, linked here, and I talked about accidentally camping near a bee's nest. It was fine at night when they weren't active, but waking up to them swarming around my tent was pretty unpleasant. So make sure to check out your neighbors when you're getting ready to set up your tent for the night. Okay, tip number 2. This is view. And what I mean by view is to consider things like the sun rising and setting. Do you want to wake up to the bright early morning sun, or are you trying to sleep in a little? Both have their advantages. Maybe you want to stay in your tent away from the mosquitoes and watch the sunset. This just means planning your tent site around more than just sleeping well, but consider the entire experience. What do you want to see when you crawl out of your tent in the morning? I actually like to position my motorcycle in a picturesque way, so when I wake up and I open my tent door, I get this little picture of here's your day, and it always puts a smile on my face and just kind of sets the tone for the day. So this may seem like a trivial factor, but I think it's an important aspect to the motorcycle camping experience, and I like to consider things like view because it definitely enhances things for me. And it's like I'm creating my own movie to watch later in my mind. And tip number 3 is look for level ground. This may seem obvious, but can sometimes be difficult to see a slight ramp on the ground. So what I like to do is put my tarp down first and I lay down on it. See if I can feel an incline or decline, something that I couldn't see. This way I don't end up sliding down my tent all night or having all the blood rush to my head. This also gives me a chance to make sure there aren't any sticks or rocks or anything that makes the surface uneven. Just test out the spot before committing to set up your tent there. Another thing to consider when looking for flat ground is to keep an eye out for low spots where water could collect if it happens to rain. Make sure there's somewhere for the water to drain, preferably not where you're sleeping. On the other side of that, try to avoid sleeping on high ledges. Not on the ledge, of course, but near high ledges where high winds could exist, and you're going to be more likely to be struck by lightning. Tip number 4 is look for trees. Now, they can be beneficial in many ways. They can provide shade and heat during the day, some cover and protection from a little light rain, and will help keep dew and condensation to a minimum at night. It will reduce condensation on your tent because the air under cover of trees will be warmer than air in a meadow or a field or open space, typically. But also, you should be looking at the health of the trees around you. Look up for any branches that are dead or could potentially fall on you at night. Look for trees, too, that might be ready to collapse, because if the weather takes a turn for the worst, you don't want to end up waking up under a tree. And in all seriousness, this is actually very dangerous, so you definitely want to take a look above you. Now also avoid single trees, as they will attract lightning, as they'll be the high point in an area if you're in a meadow with only one tree, and this is what lightning will aim itself at. This is also a good reason to avoid completely open meadows or fields, because you will be the high point if there happens to be a thunderstorm. And while you're looking up, you should check out other overhead hazards like ledges where rocks could fall from. Okay, the fifth and final tip is water. You should be at least 200 feet away from any water source for a few reasons. For one, slow moving or still water can attract bugs, but also larger nocturnal animals will be more active near water, and you don't want to be in a dangerous animal's path to water, so it's best to avoid that. And also, being near water is going to cause more condensation. Okay, now you also want to consider where to park your motorcycle. Some campgrounds have designated parking spots, and in that case this isn't usually an issue. But if you're wild camping, you want to look out for a few things when parking. For one, you should avoid parking under sappy trees, because this can be a real pain to clean off. But also, you want to make sure you aren't parking too close to your tent, and especially not leaning towards the tent, because if it sinks into the ground and falls over, you probably won't want to have to pick up your bike from underneath it. Now you should bring a larger footprint for your side stand, and actually mine has one added to it, is bolted on, so consider something like that. And also make sure not to park too close to the fire. Now this seems obvious, but if you consider that just one ember popping out of the fire and landing on your seat, that's going to be a really expensive fix. Okay, bonus tip. If you happen to be camping in a buggy area, try to find a spot with a little breeze. This will help keep the mosquitoes to a minimum. And also, speaking of bugs, avoid tall grassy areas, which will attract ticks and bugs. Okay, extra bonus tip. If you are wild camping, or even if you're at a campground, be aware of your impact. Choose the spot that already looks used and don't expand the worn area. Don't sleep on vegetation that could be damaged either. And just a few more things to keep in mind. Breezes blow up canyons or mountains during the day and down at night. Hollows and valleys are usually the wettest, coldest, and foggiest spots around. Cold air travels down water corridors, streams and rivers, etc., and it will settle in low spots. And cold air collects in meadows. Just some things to be aware of when you're looking for a tent site. Okay guys, question of the day. What are some things you look for when setting up your tent? Let us know in the comments below. Alright, I hope you guys got something out of this video. If you did, make sure you hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe if you guys want to see more videos about motorcycles, camping, traveling, and adventure. And thanks for watching. See you soon.